Hey everybody, Cam White here, and welcome to your 2022 year ahead horoscope for Sagittarius Sun and Rising. In this video, we're going to be going over pretty much every major transit of 2022 in a very general format. This is actually like a two-part video series where in another video where I'm gonna link it in the description below, and I'm sure YouTube will also promote it too. But I have a video where I go over every transit of 2022, all the major transits, and I talk about what the transits are going to signify and mean in and of themselves in that video. But in this video today, we're going to be going over the same transits, but we're going to be focusing on how it's going to be affecting you as a Sagittarius rising. Now, if you want to keep up with every single month of 2022 and you want to watch your horoscope for every single month of 2022, be sure to check out my Patreon where I offer exclusive horoscopes for the month as well as early release content, ad-free content, and a bunch of other things as well. So make sure you check that out. And I guess with that being said, we can go ahead and jump straight into the horoscope. Now, this is my 9th or 10th horoscope I've done. Running a little screwy up here, so I might fuck up a few things, but just bear with me. I'm also a Sagittarius rising, so this is also like my own horoscope, so I'm going to be learning about what this year has in store for me too. Anyway, here's the thing. So we're ending 2021 / starting 2022 with a few big transits. The first one that we got to talk about is Jupiter. So Jupiter is going to be entering Pisces, I think December 30th, 2021. So we pretty much start January. We start the new year off with Jupiter ingressing into Pisces. Now, Jupiter ingressed into Pisces for like 5 minutes earlier this year, back in May and June. So I want you to kind of think back to May and June and what was going on for you then regarding the Jupiter topics, which we'll talk about. Jupiter, your ruling planet, by the way. So this also not only describes you and your body and your image and your general how you're doing anyway, but Jupiter is a significator for a few specific things. One that's like faith, hope, abundance, gifts, doing things in a big, larger than life way. Jupiter is very altruistic, trying to see things in a glass half full type way. And as Jupiter is in its home sign of Pisces, Jupiter has access to all of the tools and the resources it needs to do that job. So Jupiter has access to all the things it needs to be hopeful, to be abundant, to be in a good mood. And Jupiter is going to be entering your 4th house of your home, your family life, your living situation, where you live, your foundation, your parents, your ancestry, your roots. Think back to May and June and what was going on for you back then. You're going to come up to this in a very similar way. So you're going to be feeling good. It's going to be in your 4th house of your home and family stuff. You're going to be seeing an expansion here. You're going to be seeing things going bigger here, doing things in a bigger way here. So all things to keep in mind as Jupiter goes into Pisces. Second thing, so this is something that we're kind of dealing with mostly in 2021, but we'll get in 2022, and that's the Venus retrograde. Venus will enter shadow November of 2021. It will be in shadow all of December, and then like a few days before Christmas, Venus will station retrograde. So we really walk into the new year with Venus in the middle of a retrograde in Capricorn. There's a lot to explain here, so let's kind of get into it. Venus naturally signifies fun and connection and love and romance and indulgence. And in the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn's all about rules, systems, regulations, plans, right? Venus retrograding in Capricorn is like a change into the rules that we play the game with, right? Like the rules are changing. But Venus is retrograding in your 2nd house of your money, your finances, your resources, your possessions, what you own, what you have. So you're going to see a big relationship change to your money and to your possessions and just materialism all in of itself. Venus, just like life is cyclical. Venus retrogrades are very cyclical. And in fact, Venus retrogrades in the exact same sign every 8 years. So 8 years ago, Venus was retrograding in Capricorn. I want you to think back. What was going on January, February, March of 2014? You're going to see a very similar thing kind of come back up during this time. Now, let's talk about what Venus represents in your chart. Venus represents your 11th house of your friends, your colleagues, your networks, your groups of people that you're associated with. Now, because you're a Sag rising, if you're like me, you could possibly have your midheaven in Libra. A lot of Sag risings have their midheaven in Libra. So this could involve career topics too, but mainly this is going to involve friends and communities. That's retrograding in your second house. So maybe your relationship to your friends and maybe borrowing money, or friends are going to be changing, money's going to be changing, but Venus also rules your sixth house. If your 10th house is like your career and your title, the sixth house is like the labor that goes into that. And so as Venus rules your sixth house of labor, it's retrograding your second house. I think maybe the labor that you do to make money might change. Your relationship to money and finances and work in general is going to change. That's really the big thing that you're starting January off with. So Venus will be in the middle of a retrograde. Jupiter's now in the fourth house, right? Big focus on family, home, living situation. But then between January 14th and January 15th, Mercury is going to station retrograde. Now, Mercury stationed retrograde in Aquarius, like I think in January or February of 2021. So you can kind of think similarly of what was going on back then. Similar things going to be happening this time. But what's interesting about this Mercury retrograde is Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde exactly square Uranus, which is a pretty big deal. Mercury is going to enter your third house, where I kind of hate talking about the third house, and I always complain about it because the third house just rules a lot of different things. So you got to have to really kind of like think and, examine. The third house rules things like short distance travel. It rules things like communication, much more in like a written format or like a tangible format. The third house rules your neighbors, your siblings, family members that aren't necessarily like your parents, but like extended family members. It rules short distance traveling, so sometimes cars can get thrown in there. The third house also rules like your schedule and like your time. The third house, if the ninth house is like your higher education and like your experience, the third house is like, how do you use that knowledge? How do you use that education? How do you integrate that into your life? Saturn's been going through your third house since 2021. Like for me as a Sag rising, I've just gotten really organized in a lot of different areas in my life. I've been much more efficient with my time and my schedule and things like that. And again, the third house is just a weird area. It's going to show up very specifically for every individual. But Mercury stationing retrograde squaring Uranus. Uranus is in your sixth house. So your habits, your health, your routines, your day-to-day activities, very up in the air. There's a lot of instability, a lot of liberating, a lot of ups and downs. Mercury stationing retrograde squaring Uranus. So there might be, for example, this is probably going to be some tech issue, some messaging issue, some tech issue going awry. Mercury rules your 10th house of your career and your like how the public sees you, and it also rules your 7th house of relationships and like clients and things like that. So like Mercury retrograding your third, I would expect a technical issue that just kind of shits on you. Like it's just this is gonna just be like a really like Mercury retrogrades are about like playing games and delays. They're not the worst things ever, but this is gonna kind of throw a rut, cause a rut in or throw a wrench in your plans. So we move forward. The big thing also too, and I'm going to mention this for you guys, is the nodes. We're going to talk about this later on in the year, but the big thing around, hold on, I actually want to fix my camera. There we go, cool. I could do that with the Sag risings. You guys won't care. Anyway, if I did that with the Virgo risings, they would have tripped. But in January, the nodes are going to switch signs. The north node is going to go into Taurus. The south node is going to go into Scorpio. Pretty much. In 2020 and in 2021, if you were a Sag rising, you felt exhausted and drained and you were taking naps. That was because the South Node was on your ascendant. The South Node is going to be going into your 12th house of your subconscious, of hidden enemies. So there's going to be a lot of like releasing and purging of like things up in your mind, maybe fears and anxieties. And the North Node is going to be going into Taurus in your 6th house, where you're going to be much more focused on like efficiency, day-to-day activities, habits, routines, health, employment, things like that. And we're going to talk about that as we keep going on. But pretty much that's January for the most part. The big thing that we got to talk about here is when we get into February. So by February 4th, there's a lot going on. One is Mercury stations direct on Pluto. Mercury is going to station retrograde square Uranus, and then station direct on Pluto in your 2nd house. This is a pretty big change to your finances and resources and your money, especially if like Mercury is your time lord. But most of this is just kind of like figuring out what needs to get corrected in the money situation, and maybe what needs a little bit more security here. And then, you won't have so much Mercury issues. But the second thing is Venus stations direct. Venus entered shadow in November, was in shadow all of December, retrograded before Christmas, and has been retrograde all of January. Your relationship to money is different now. Your relationship to possessions is different now. Your relationship to your friends, maybe you have some new friends, maybe you have some new coworkers. Things are starting to move forward at this point. January is kind of like a big downhill, and then February is kind of like a good rock bottom that's a very stable rock bottom. That's also like the Sun, Saturn, Cazimi. But the other thing is Mars enters Capricorn. This is a good and bad thing, depending on who you are, what you like. Mars rules fights and conflicts and energy, and it's all about burning and separating and fights, right? Mars is exalted in Capricorn, which pretty much means Mars does really, really well in Capricorn. If Mars is like energy, drive, and fighting, Capricorn's like system, rules, and regulations. And like nothing makes your energy more efficient than having a plan, right? Mars has a plan in Capricorn, and Mars is like sticking to the plan. A few things. Mars being in your second house, you're probably going to be spending more money. Mars just burns through cash during this time, but Mars is in your second house. You're also going to be utilizing your resources and your money at a different time, in a different way at this time. Spending more money, using your money. Here's the thing. As we go through February, as we get to February 12th, Mars and Venus are going to be conjoining each other pretty much to the exact same degree for a whole month. Mars and Venus conjoin each other all the time, but they're going to be conjoining each other exactly to the degree for a whole month, which is pretty rare. And I would assume that this is going to be a lot of focus on, again, money stuff. But let's talk about a few things. Mars rules your 12th house of the subconscious, of repressed, unacknowledged parts of yourself. So this could bring up money issues regarding like your relationship to wealth, your relationship to money. Mars also rules your 5th house of love, romance, sex, creativity. This could be being very creative. Venus rules your 11th house of friends, 6th house of work. Mars, Venus in the 2nd house. A lot of time and money being invested in a lot of different ways. I'm not sure how this is going to look for everybody, but this is going to definitely be like spending more money, making more money, and getting a lot more clear about that area just in general. And really most of February is just this Mars, Venus in your 2nd house. So, focusing on making your money, maybe clearing up what that Mercury retrograde, any problems that caused. That's pretty much mostly it. Just the money stuff in February and just really starting to move forward. But then that brings us to March. So we start March off with this Mars Venus conjunction on Pluto. So there's pretty much 3 things here. 1, Venus is now out of shadow. I want you to think about this. Venus enters shadow in November of 2021. It will be in shadow December of 2021, station retrograde that Christmas, then be retrograde all January. Then we start February off with Venus station direct, and then it doesn't leave shadow till March 2nd. That's 5 months of Venus being in the same sign, same area of your chart. This is a huge relationship change to your money, your finances, your resources. At this time, Mars and Venus are still conjoining each other now on Pluto. This is kind of a dramatic investment. Like Pluto rules power and fear. So this could, for some of you, be like you could be really freaked out about some money stuff. For a lot of you, could be making like big investments, making a big purchase. Mercury is also going to be conjoining Saturn. So Mercury is kind of like a microphone. It's the messenger, right? And it's on top of Saturn. Saturn rules your 2nd house of money. So this is definitely becoming much more aware about money things. And the 3rd house is like, how you organize your money, how you organize your resources and finances. So this is having a lot of clarity here. This is also the new moon in Pisces in your 4th house starting in March. So there's this like clearing up of energy and kind of settling down of energy and things kind of like, again, like this is much more of a new start. This is much more of the new year. I mean, by this time too, it's spring, but new moon in your 4th, resetting the energy in your home, your living situation, that's for sure. Which that brings us to, and here's the thing with March, we'll have that, and then Mars and Venus enter Aquarius. So this is a little weird. I don't even know. Again, I'm a Sag rising, so this is going to be affecting me. I have no idea what this is going to be yet. The last time there was a bunch of transits in Aquarius, I learned a bunch of things. Like I was learning, for me personally, I know a lot of Sag risings. I gained a ton of weight in 2020, and then I lost a ton of weight in 2021. And I know a lot of Sag risings that had the same exact thing that happened to me. Now, last year in 2021, when everything was in Aquarius, I was learning about nutrition and I was just learning a bunch of new things at this time. And I'm bringing this up because the 9th house rules like institutional education, like higher education, right? Like experience, travel, versus 3rd house is much more of like taking a course or learning this or learning that. And I think Mars, Venus, Saturn, Mercury all being in your 3rd house by March, I think you're just and this is what I've been telling everybody. January is kind of like downhill. February is kind of like we know where the bottom is, but then March is like you're like a new kid at a new school in a new town you never lived in, and it's just weird. It's different. You're getting into new and weird things. I think that's what March is like you're having fun with it, experimenting, enjoying new things, but it's different. It's weird. The third house rules your neighbors, your siblings, your local community, short distance travel. So there's a lot of focus on that too. For some of you, this could be like car stuff. This could just be traveling stuff. It's just weird and different for the most part. The two big things that are also going on during this transit that I've been kind of lightly brushing on is Mars and Venus are also going to be squaring Uranus. So I think you might be like trying to implement new things into your schedule, utilizing new tools. And as you utilize those new tools, there's going to be a trial and error period. And I think Mars and Venus squaring Uranus, I think you're going to see what works, and I think you're going to see what doesn't work during this time, which is fine. We have like the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in your fourth house too. This is really big for like career, relationship, living situation stuff. Jupiter's going through your fourth. This expect an expansion with home, living situation, family stuff. Mercury rules relationships and career. So this is definitely like doing more with relationships or career stuff based on living situation stuff, based on how you're feeling, right? So that's March. Pretty much March is kind of a weird month, but that brings us to April. Everything changes in April. First thing in April is we have a Mercury Cazimi in your fifth house. That's cool. That's just gaining a lot more like clarity and insight around fifth house topics of love, romance, sex, creativity, which is important here. In like 5 minutes, we're going to talk about that. But it's April 5th that everything changes. I know this is April 6th, but just know I said April 5th. Here's the thing. Venus enters Pisces on April 5th. Jupiter is also on top of Neptune at this point in your fourth house. Here's the thing. Jupiter conjoining Neptune is really is a cool transit for the mundane world. How this is going to show up in your fourth house. So let me explain to you what I'm doing. So maybe this can have some ideas. So like the fourth house rules family and ancestry, right? Jupiter and Neptune more specifically rules like the media, like movies and cinema, because it rules illusion and it rules mysticism. Jupiter conjoining Neptune is like going to be expanding that in a lot of big ways. For example, what I'm doing is pretty much everyone in my family's dead, and I have all of the paperwork for all of my family stuff, and I'm thinking about making a digital version of it. And I think that's why it might be when I do this. Jupiter, Neptune in the fourth house, like doing family work, something to do with Neptune, maybe something with media. But Venus enters your fourth house. Venus in your fourth house, you're probably going to be spending money on your home place. You're probably going to be making your place look nicer. Every time I've had Venus transit my fourth house, I'm always trying to make my place look nicer. But I'm also a Libra moon. Anyway, Venus is going to enter your fourth house. And honestly, you're going to be spending more time at home, enjoying your home time. Mars and Saturn are in your third house. There's going to be that Mars-Saturn conjunction in your third. We've been here before. Mars and Saturn conjoined in Aquarius the last time on March 12th, 2020. Do you remember what that was? It was lockdown. What were you doing March 12th, 2020? Because you're going to have a very similar comeback to that moment around this time. But Venus is going to be in your fourth house. You're going to be enjoying your home life, your living situation. This is good for friends. This is good for work. I'm loving this. April, and I mean, if you've also watched my horoscopes, you know that I've said April is like the fucking best month ever. And let me get to why. We're going to fast forward. Mars will go through your fourth house. That's whatever. It's April 30th. So the world is open. Everyone's having a great time at this point. I think, a lot of things are going to change, but I think everything's going to be like just the world's going to be partying at this point. But there's a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in your fourth house. Sorry. Again, this is like my 9th or 10th one. I'm trying to remember what I have and haven't said. So Jupiter's in its home sign of Pisces, right? You're ruled by Jupiter. So whatever Jupiter's doing, you're doing, right? So Jupiter is in its home sign. You're feeling good. Jupiter's on top of Neptune. Dreamy, illusionary, like really getting like woke and deep. But Venus is going to conjoin Jupiter where Venus is, okay. So each planet has a specific degree in the zodiac in which it is its favorite degree to be in. It works the best in. For Venus, that's 28 degrees Pisces. And not only is Venus at 28 degrees Pisces, Venus is conjoining Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces, at 28 degrees Pisces. So that's really good, right? Friend stuff and you coming together in home and family living situation, coworkers, employment and stuff like that coming together in home and living situation. It's all gravy. Let's also look at this. This is an eclipse in your sixth house. It's ruled by Venus. So again, you want to look at this eclipse that's ruled by Venus. It's right here. And like I said before, the South Node is in your 12th house now. The south node's in your 12th house. you're kind of purging a lot of shit. And the North Node's in your 6th house. You're really focused on tangibility. Like, hey, what is my routine? Where are my health? Where are my habits? My work, my labor. This is an eclipse in your 6th house where this is really going to be kind of a setting a new mile marker, setting a new stone when it comes to your work, your day-to-day activities, your habits. And it's ruled by Venus in the 4th. I think this is a new work, new health, new lifestyle habit change based off of living situation stuff. That's really going to be really, really good at this time. This is a time to celebrate. I'm loving this. Which that brings us into May. Now in May, Venus will go into Aries, and then there's a Mercury retrograde in your 7th house of relationships. So that will be something that comes up during this time. But the big thing I want to talk about in May is Jupiter goes into Aries. This is a night and day difference for the fire signs, but and I'm really excited for it because it's hitting a lot of my good planets. But anyway, Jupiter's your ruling planet, right? Whatever Jupiter's doing, you're sort of doing in a sense. Jupiter's going to go through Pisces through your 4th house. So there's going to be this good stuff with family and living situation stuff. But then Jupiter enters your 5th. Jupiter, again, is all about abundance, expansion, doing things in a big way, receiving gifts, having fun, being altruistic and open-minded. Jupiter is doing that job with Mars's tools now that it's in Aries. So Jupiter's being optimistic and hopeful through Mars stuff by just taking action, right? That's what Mars is about: fighting, conflict, confrontation, doing things big in a bold way. So Jupiter in Aries is if I believe in it, I'm going to do it. If I do it, I believe in it. Jupiter is going to enter your 5th house. The 5th house rules love, romance, sex, pleasure, art, music, creativity, partying, gambling, children. Jupiter going through your 5th. A lot of you are going to have kids. A lot of you are going to have a lot of fun during this time. But Jupiter's going to enter your 5th where there's this huge expansion with fun and enjoyment in your life and creativity. And I think you're going to be really focused on that. And I'm going to double down on that because by the time we get to the end of May, Mars will enter Aries, and Mars is going to conjoin Jupiter by May 28th, where there's this Mars is now in Aries, right? Your 5th house ruler. You're taking intense action. You're having fun. You're doing intense things. You're focusing on your creativity. And Mars is conjoining Jupiter. You're doing it big. Go big or go home. Go all the way. April through May looks super, super fun for you guys. But Mercury is going to retrograde in your 7th and then go back into your 6th house of coworkers, employees, health, habits, pets too. And Mercury is going to station direct, pretty much square Saturn. So there's this frustration with communication and time and efficiency and organization, I think, around this time. When we get to June, Mercury pretty much stations direct, and then Saturn stations retrograde, immediately the day after. So this is pretty much by the time we get into June, this is what's going on. Big things with June. Mercury's going to station direct square Saturn. So this is kind of it's going to be kind of a frustrating, but it's not the worst. It's just Mercury and Taurus squaring Saturn and Aquarius is someone is just resisting hearing your message, and that's okay. But Saturn's going to station retrograde. Saturn's been going through your 3rd house for some time. You've been taking on more responsibilities and discipline and authority and maturity around your communication, around siblings, around short distance travel, around your time and your schedule and how you organize yourself. As Saturn stations retrograde, you're going to be kind of dealing with the weight of that responsibility. I want you to think back to May, June, July, August, and September of 2021 of last year. What was feeling heavy around that time, especially around this 3rd house, around maybe siblings, around maybe your organization of your time and your communication? So there's going to be this heavy sense of responsibility at this time. And it's going to this Mercury retrograde is going to kind of initiate that. So there might be a miscommunication within a relationship, a delay in a relationship that kind of makes you think a little bit more about what you're doing. But nonetheless, Mars and Jupiter are still in your 5th house. You're still having a blast, still having a good time. Venus is in your 6th house. This is really focused on your work, your health, your day-to-day activities, your routines. And then through June, really the only thing that's going on in June is Saturn stationing retrograde and then this Venus stuff. Venus is going to conjoin Uranus and the North Node. Excuse me. Like I said before, the North Node's in Taurus. There's this urge and there's this hunger to innovate and redefine what your routines, your health, your habits, your work is. And I think Venus conjoining Uranus in the North Node is a very risky gamble that pays off. It's you're going to be having fun with your work. You're going to be doing the health thing, But a few days later, Venus is going to square Saturn, where it's just kind of like things are good, but there's space in between it, right? It's like this work is good, your schedule is good, everything's fine, but there are, it does come with its own issues. So pretty much just to say, I think June is a pretty okay month. Not a lot's going on. It's just the Saturn retrograde and like the Venus thing. The big thing is the Mars-Jupiter back in the end of May. But that's really June. June is just the Saturn retrograde. And then as we get into July, things change. So in July, on July what? Beginning of July 5th, Mars enters Taurus. So I want you to think about the last time Mars entered Taurus. That was January 6th of 2021. So January and February of 2021, Mars was in Taurus. Mars rules energy, drive, right? And it's in Taurus, it's in detriment, where Mars in Taurus is more about like inertia and how much energy you put into something. Well, you're going to be kind of coasting on that for a while. Mars in Taurus it's a fixed sign, right? So Mars's energy is fixated. It's in Taurus though, so sustaining that energy might be hard. Mars in Taurus is typically a little bit more lazy, but Mars in Taurus going through your 6th house of your work, your habits, your routine, your health. There's more of an emphasis here on this area. There's going to be this kind of like, hey, what are you doing every day? What is your work? You're really just going to be kind of getting into a grind, like a very consistent motion. And that's July. Like it's just Mars and Taurus in your 6th house. Things kind of slow down. You were doing things really, really big and bold in April and May and June, and life was great. And then July, things kind of slow down. Things really slow down in July. And then it's just Mars and Taurus all of July until July 28th. Jupiter stations retrograde. This isn't bad at all. But what's interesting about this is Jupiter is your ruling planet, and Jupiter has flown. Think of Jupiter was in Aquarius in December of 2021 and then moved into Pisces. It flew through Pisces from January, February, March, April. It conjoined Venus, had an eclipse on top of it, right? Conjoined Neptune. Then it moved into Aries. Then it conjoined Mars. Then it stations retrograde. There's so many things Jupiter has just introduced into your life that as Jupiter stations retrograde, this is about kind of like going, okay, how do I feel about all of this? What just happened? Jupiter going direct is like giving you a lot of gifts, giving you a lot of opportunities. But as Jupiter goes retrograde, this is about like, like the money truck's going to run a little dry. And I think as Jupiter goes retrograde, you're going to have to go, okay, what am I still grateful for? What do I still have? Jupiter and Aries, like, do you believe in yourself? I think the optimism will be running a little thin at this point. So you're going to have to really kind of go within and be like, all right, I got to do this. I got to believe in myself. But the Jupiter retrograde will be really interesting just simply because so much has happened in this time that once Jupiter stations retrograde, it's like going to start all catching up to you. But then we get to August 1st. I've talked about this like 15 times now. So I might not say all the parts of this I need to, but anyway, Mars is going to conjoin the North Node and Uranus. This is a pretty big deal. This is probably there's 2 bad days of 2022. This is the first one. Here's the thing. Mars is in your 6th house. The 6th house rules accidents and things breaking. It rules ill health. The 1st house rules good health. The 6th house rules ill health. Mars is going to be in your 6th house, so you might, be having more like problems than normal. Mars is going to be conjoining the North Node, where this is like really dramatic. Like the North Node just makes everything so much more dramatic than it needs to be. And it's on top of Uranus, where there's like this innovation, this doing things very suddenly and sporadically in your 6th house, where I think this might be like a very random accident that could occur, a health issue that could occur. If anything, well, for example, like this could just be an accident in your workplace. Like something just goes haywire at your work and maybe you're out of work for a couple of days or something. Maybe nothing happens to you. But I would expect August 1st to be quite problematic in terms of work, health, day-to-day activity things. Mars rules your 12th house of like hidden enemies, and it's in your 6th house of coworkers. Maybe you have a coworker try to fuck with you or something, or they don't like you. 12th house also, the 12th house rules like hospitals and like surgery and things like that, and it's in your 6th house. So maybe like you get sick or something and you don't even know what it is, or it's very a random sickness and you kind of have to take some time out. Could be that, I don't know. But this is definitely going to throw a wrench in your plans. I've been telling everybody, August just sucks right off the bat. And then if we move a couple days later to August 7th, on August 7th, Mars then squares Saturn, where Again, Saturn's in your third house of like, how are you using your time? How are you using your tools? How are you using your money? Mars is in your sixth house, where this transit is the definition of going nowhere fast. But it's like in your sixth house of work, habits, routine. It's in Taurus, squaring Saturn. Like you're just, I don't know, maybe you don't want to do anything. Maybe you're sick and, you got to have some time for that. I don't know. But I could definitely say this is Mars squaring Saturn is very, again, it's like your truck is stuck in the mud and you're just pounding on the gas pedal and you're going nowhere. And it ain't going to change anytime soon. So, but this is in between the third house of like your time, your siblings, short distance travel, and your sixth house of like your schedule, your work, your coworkers, pets too. This could be a problem with pets. Just expect problems to show up in those areas. And it's funny. That's pretty much August. August is like that first week. It's super shitty. And then like nothing pretty much. Like, yeah, you'll have like the Venus and Mercury transits, which are whatever. But then Mars will enter Gemini. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Just hold your horses. But Mars will enter Gemini and things will kind of at least lighten up a little bit when Mars enters Gemini. And that's kind of how we go into September. Now, September is interesting because in September, Mars will enter shadow pretty much right at the beginning. So this is what's important. Mars is like, again, action, energy, drive, tenacity, fights, conflicts, inflammation. Mars rules your 12th house of hidden enemies, the subconscious, self-sabotage, isolation, alienation. Mars also rules your 5th house of love, romance, sex, pleasure. Jupiter's also there too, so your mind's on that area. Mars is about, again, fights, conflicts, energy. It's in Gemini. I also have a Mars in Gemini too. Mars in Gemini is like doing two things at once, using your words as weapons, using rationale to fight. Mars is in your 7th house of relationships. So you're going to have fights and conflicts with people, with random people. People are going to pick a fight with you. You're going to be more argumentative than normal. You're going to be really engaged in a relationship at this point. But what's important about the beginning of September is Mars enters shadow. So whatever you're doing around here, you're going to come back to. So it's really important to just take really big mental notes of what's going on for you at this time regarding relationships and other people. So pretty much the big things of September is Mars enters shadow. And then we have this Mercury retrograde opposite Jupiter. So this is the only Mercury, well, not only. The Mercury retrograde in Aquarius earlier in the year is pretty crazy. The Mercury retrograde in Gemini isn't that crazy. When it stations direct, squaring Saturn, that sucks, but whatever. This, I think, is a little, not crazy. I think that's a weird word. I think this is a helpful Mercury retrograde because Mercury is going to go station retrograde opposite Jupiter. So that I think that's going to give us some time to really evaluate and really think about like this whole Jupiter and Aries transit and what it means. But Mercury is going to retrograde in Libra. Miscommunication with friends, delay with friends and community and people. Mercury's opposite Jupiter. It's going to be like, how do you integrate yourself with your friends based off of like your shared interests? If the 5th house is like your hobbies and your recreational activities, your 11th house of Libra is like, who do you do those things with? Or the 11th house is like your friends, and the 5th house is like what connects you and your friends together. So this is a really big look at like your hobbies, your creativity, and do you have friends around that? Do you involve yourself with a community of people? That's really the big thing of this Mercury retrograde for you guys of September, and that's the main stuff of September. Really, is this Mercury retrograde. Mars is also now in shadow, pretty much still. And here's the thing, Mars is going to be trining Saturn for a long time. Mars is like really slowing down at this point. I like this Mars retrograde simply because I think this is a very constructive Mars retrograde. That doesn't mean it's not going to suck, but what that does mean is like, for example, like dieting and training. It sucks. It's not always fun, but it's constructive and it's good at times. Mars trining Saturn is like the same thing. It's like, it's not always going to be the funnest, but it's very constructive. It's something that you're going to be able to apply later on. It's good. You just kind of have to, toughen up essentially, which that leads us to October 1st. So the problem with October is it's like 4 different months all in one. And the reason why is we start the month off with Saturn squaring Uranus. Again, excuse me, I had something in my teeth. Think back to the first time Saturn squared Uranus. January of 2021, and then it was the summer of 2021, and then it was the fall/winter, mostly winter of 2021. We haven't had an exact one until the very end of October of 2022. And I'm pretty sure this is the last Saturn-Uranus square. Saturn's in your third house. That use of your time, that use of your tools, that use of your knowledge. Are you applying it? Because it's squaring Uranus in your sixth house. Uranus is unpredictable, right? It's in your sixth house of your work, your habits, your routine. And this is kind of like, hey, can you roll with the punches? Can you bend and not break? Because this is one of those moments of, okay, you're going to have to like be really flexible with your work and your schedule and your time and your routine. We start the month off with so again, think of the beginning of 2021, the middle of 2021, and the very end of 2021 in terms of communication, time, and like work and day-to-day activities. And maybe what sporadic changes did you make very randomly that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't work. You're going to have another one of those in October. Also in October, again, the Mars, now let me just say, the Mars retrograde will be good for the most part, but there is one part of it I don't like, and that is Mars is going to be squaring Neptune. So Mars is, again, fights, conflicts. It's in Gemini, fighting with our rationale, fighting with our words. It's in your seventh house. You're really engaged with people at this time, but it's squaring Neptune. There's going to be this like, not sure what you're fighting over, not sure what you're fighting about, not sure what's going on here. You're not sure if someone's on your side or you're not sure if someone's not on your side. Mars squaring Neptune is, I think you're just going to be really skeptical and confused in general. It's Mars and Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces. It's like, it's like, have you ever like told, like you like read an article and you went to tell someone about it, but then you like went to say it and you're like, I actually don't remember what that article said. It's just like in my head. That's this. That's like, you're just going to be kind of tripped up. You might think you know something, but you don't. The good news is, though, more towards the end of October, here's the thing. Venus and the sun are going to be trining Mars. Mars is trining Saturn. There's all of this constructive air energy going on, which I really like. Mercury's back out of shadow now by the middle of October. So it's all very constructive. And then we have this Venus Cazimi at the very end of October. It starts at 28 Libra. There's all of this new peaceful energy with your friends and your community and your networks, which is great. But then we'll have the Venus Cazimi again at 29 Libra, and then it continues into Scorpio. In fact, Saturn stations direct, and like the Sun and Venus both move into Scorpio, still Cazimi, like on October 23rd, all on the same day. So this is when the energy changes drastically. I think this is going to be like Sun and Venus going into your 12th house. The 12th house rules isolation, alienation, repressed parts of yourself, self-sabotage, hidden enemies, asylums, healing, but like in a sense of like going away to heal, like not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to go heal by like drinking a smoothie. It's like, I'm going to go in the desert for like 6 months to heal. That's kind of starting at this point. Like I said, the South Node in your 12th house, there's going to be a lot of purging. I think realizing a lot of shit. Meaning like the 12th house is like self-sabotage and, things that you repress, and the South Node's going through there. It's like, it's kind of time to clean that up and get rid of some stuff that's no longer serving. And this is that time, really. This is like, you got to confront some things. You got to get rid of some shit you don't need. That starts with this total solar eclipse that we have on October 25th in the 12th house. This is really kind of like, well, the 12th house rules hidden enemies. So I think this could, in your 11th house ruler of friends is going to be there. I think this is maybe getting rid of some friends, getting rid of some people in your life. Also, I think challenging your idea of trust, because here's the thing. We'll have all this 12th house stuff of hidden enemies, isolation, and like paranoia come up. But then on Halloween, Mars stations retrograde, and Mars rules your 12th house. So again, there's this huge theme of, well, here's the thing. The 12th house rules hidden enemies and like self-sabotage, right? And like things that you didn't see. Mars rules over that, and Mars is going retrograde in your 7th house of open enemies, of relationships, right? So there's this really weird look of like, you're going to be kind of tripping, going within your head a little bit, and you're going to be really changing your relationships here by this time when Mars stations retrograde. Whatever you were kind of building up for and fighting with, you're going to start going back on. When we get into November too, Jupiter's now back in Pisces. So this is the thing. It's a really wet November. Everything's here in Scorpio, trining Jupiter in Pisces. 12th house, 4th house stuff. I think you're going to be spending a lot of alone time during this time. A lot more time at home, a lot more time by yourself. Maybe that's for better or for worse. I don't know. But yeah, 12th house stuff. You're going to be kind of going in your head a little bit, being like, I need to get rid of this. I need to get rid of that. Mars in your 7th house, changing relationships with people, separating yourself from other people. But then everything changes. Did I just, whoops, how did that happen? Everything changes when we get to November 8th. So November 8th is the second bad day of 2022. That is because there's a lot going on. One, Sun, Mercury, Cazimi. So that's like a message, a communication. Mercury rules your 7th house of relationships and your 12th house of open enemies. So I think, or your hidden enemy. So I think this might be realizing who's your friend, who's not your friend. It's also opposite Uranus. So it's in your 6th house of coworkers, employees, pets, health. This could be health issues too. That's a big thing here because your 7th house could also rule like doctors and stuff like that. So this could literally, some of you could have like an emergency surgery on this day. It's also a total lunar eclipse on Uranus. Expect the unexpected. Expect things to, I don't want to say just fall apart as if your whole life's going to come crumbling, but like expect some things to like, well, here's the thing. These are all fixed signs, and this is all squaring Saturn too. Things in fixed signs, they don't bend, they break. This is also, Saturn's in your 3rd house of neighbors, so this could involve like people around you. But just November 8th it's not going to be good feedback. It's going to be really unstable. It's going to be really uncomfortable and difficult, and that's it. That's just, there's no, again, I think with the South Node in your 12th house, I think there's things that you need to like release, that you need to get rid of. And the North Node in the Taurus, like, hey, what's consistent, what's stable, and let's get rid of all of the fears and bullshit in the back of your head. That's November. And then the thing is, at the end of November, Mercury and Venus and end of Scorpio trining Jupiter. I think, again, you're going to be spending more alone time, and I think that's for the best maybe. Mars is going to be squaring Neptune still, so you're going to be like, okay, what am I seeing? What am I tripping on? What am I not tripping on? What am I seeing? What am I not seeing? And then by the time we get to the end of November, the biggest transit that we really have is, here, let me clean this up a little bit. Mercury and Venus are pretty much going to be conjoining each other for like the whole month, which is whatever. But they'll go opposite Mars. So again, Mercury rules your 7th house of relationships. It's in your 1st house of yourself. Venus and Mercury and Sagittarius, opposite Mars and Gemini. I think this is knowing the information that you need to know to change the relationships. Mars is in your 7th house of relationships, fights, conflicts, but it's trining Saturn. There's some type of, maybe you need to stop fighting with people. Maybe you need to change your ideas about people. I don't know. But I think you realize that by the end of November. I think this is much more about like, October is like kind of in the beginning of November when everything's in Scorpio, kind of being like a little bit in your head, versus by the end of November, you're like, okay, what can I do about this? How can I change and fix this? And kind of coming to terms with things. Jupiter stations direct, so things start to move forward in that home and family life stuff again. And then we get to December, and the only things going on in December is full moon on Mars. That happens every time Mars is retrograde. I think this is knowing like who you need to separate from your life and how you need to change your relationships in your life. And then the other thing is like Mercury and Venus will go into your 2nd house, back to the money stuff. Not a big deal, really. Jupiter goes back into Aries at the very end of December. So we're going back to the fun, love, romance, sex stuff again in your life. And then like literally December 29th, Mercury stations retrograde again in your 2nd house of money. So then we have Mercury retrogrades in earth signs, and then it's a big delay with money stuff. But that's the literal last day of the year. So I'm not even going to talk about that. If you liked this video, please give me a like. Show me that you like it by giving it a like. It really, really helps me out. And it tells me that you like this kind of content. Let me know what month you're looking forward to the most, what month you're not looking forward to the most. I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say. If you want to keep up to date with all of the monthly horoscopes, go ahead and go over to my Patreon and check out the monthly horoscopes I offer, as well as the other exclusive content. And I guess with that being said, that's all I got for you guys. So thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month. Or next year.